I've heard information that Tehran is basically saying they don't expect the talks to be fruitful. Personally, I don't expect the talks to be fruitful. I know Donald Trump is adamant about being, peace through strength, but he doesn't want a war. He doesn't want to see a bunch of people dying. But I just feel like the goal for Tehran is to get a nuclear weapon, and I don't think that they're going to be dissuaded by talks. What do you guys think?
So I guess as the resident Jew, I think the take here really is that there are some so-called isolationist types, I guess, working in the administration, and they are leaking classified information from us spying on Israel. Israel spies on us as well, so let's not get too upset about that. But they're trying to undermine...
Everybody spies on everybody.
Everybody spies on everybody, but I guess the position of these U.S. officials is trying to leak to who? To CNN, to try to undermine Israel trying to prepare themselves to strike Iran. Look, Israel preparing to strike Iran is nothing new. I just think it's kind of rich that there's some in the administration trying to do this now, given how like a week or so or two, Trump was saying that he wanted to strike them himself. So we'll see how the rest of these Iran nuclear deals kind of plays out and the negotiations play out. I don't think Iran wants to go to complete denuclearization, which has been the standard. I don't think Trump wants to get himself into another so-called JCPOA because he ran so harshly against that. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon...
What's the JCPOA for the viewers?
The JCPOA was the first Iran nuclear deal that Obama struck with the Ayatollah, and the idea here was that they were able to enrich uranium up to a certain percent, and then there was a sunset clause, which allowed them to enrich even further. It also allowed their economy not to have our different sanctions on them, and then they were able to use this capital for whatever they wanted. In many cases, it went to fund their anti-American and anti-Israel proxies in the region, including Hezbollah that Israel had to deal with, or the Houthis now that the entire world has to deal with. But if Iran was able to acquire a nuclear weapon, it would change the entire landscape of the Middle East, and it's been U.S. policy to not allow them to do that, and I think that's a good thing. Tate, how was my spin there?
It's pretty good. I mean, for me, it looks like Iran and Israel, they engage in this happens all the time, where the U.S., when we were negotiating the Abraham Accords, Iran, Hamas or Hezbollah, being an Iranian proxy, launches an attack to blow up the Abraham Accords. And likewise, this does to me seem like it could be a situation where Israel knows that there's a nuclear deal potentially getting closer to being signed, and they're trying to posture with Iran, maybe inflame that again to see if Iran will walk away from the negotiating table.
I do think Trump is liable to sign a relatively bad deal and spin it as a good deal because he wants to stack up accomplishments. Things are going very sluggishly in the Ukraine-Russia war that he promised to end as soon as he came into office, but wasn't able to. He promised on ending the war in Israel and Gaza that's actually just flamed up even more recently with their new Israel's new offensive into Gaza, the so-called Gideon's chariots that they're doing. So I think Trump's trying to rack up some wins, and I think he's willing to go a little bit beyond the pale, but I hope we don't get something like a JCPOA Part 2. Aiden, what do you think?
I mean, the State Department has been kind of challenging Israel publicly on the war in Gaza right now. So I think there 100% is a dynamic in the Trump administration where there are more isolationist types that want to make sure that nothing blows up, and they actually be concerned that Israel is going to do something, and I do think that is plausible that Israel may try to goad Iran into walking away from the deal so they can try and coerce the U.S. to continue supporting what they're doing in Gaza, even though Rubio and Trump have kind of been calling for that to die down a little bit. I ultimately think that with Israel and Iran and Trump, I mean, even the previous relationship with Iran under the Trump first term, and even with Biden, Iran will always go and say something super inflammatory, so will Israel, and at the end of the day, nobody actually wants a war there, because I think we all recognize that it would be complete hell.
Well, I mean, a broad war, I think you're right, and it's this may seem a little counterintuitive, but I think that if Israel were to strike Iran on its own without the U.S., right? Especially if the U.S. is, looking to broker a deal or is looking to talk, regardless of the likelihood of that deal actually bearing fruit or Iran sticking to the deal. If Israel strikes Iran without the U.S. blessing, I think that that's more likely to inflame the Middle East because the U.S., overwhelming military power. If the U.S. strikes, or if the U.S. is backing an Israeli strike, then the rest of the region is like, well, the the U.S. is kind of standing there saying, don't do anything back. But if the U.S. is at odds with Israel and Israel strikes, then the rest of the region might be like, well, there's some daylight between the two. So I feel like Israel's really making a significantly worse decision to go it on their own, and it's far more volatile for the rest of the Middle East.
I think Israel says they'd go at it on their own, but I don't think they'd actually have the capability to. And if they did ever want to have a successful attack on Iran's nuclear sites, I think they'd have to have the blessing and support from the United States. I don't think they just have enough armament to do it, and they can't get on the bad side of the United States. I love how the United States, they have their plausible deniability with it. It's like, oh, no, we had no, oh, it was just the Israelis. Not like we armed them to the teeth and literally are spying on them and have all the information about what they're planning anyway. So I just don't see this happening without the Trump administration's blessing. I could see this as like some isolationists in the administration trying to get ahead of this.
When you say isolationists, are you talking about people like J.D. Vance? Are you talking about America First people? Or are you talking about people that actually are actual isolationists?
I guess it's on a spectrum.
It's not my sense that there's a lot of people in the administration that are actually isolationists.
So it's a spectrum. I want to say J.D. Vance is more on the isolationist side as compared to Marco Rubio, who would be on the flip side, and maybe Pete Hegseth is in the middle. Mike Waltz was probably on the most hawkish side of that, and he got cut out of the picture. So that's how I think this is coming from a camp of people who don't want United States involved in the Middle East one way or another in striking Iran or supporting countries financially.
The reason I ask is because I disagree with the idea of people like J.D. Vance being an isolationist. I think that he is the quintessential America First guy. And I mean, if you're an America First person, and I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Aiden. If you're an America First person, that doesn't mean you want to, or at least my understanding when you hear these people talk about it, it's not that they're talking about the U.S. withdrawing from the rest of the world. It's just the U.S. doesn't need to be active in every military action in a place that the U.S. has an interest.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.